Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jody Lynn Craven, founder of Abundance Consciousness, and this is my dear friend, Heather Marie.
Hi, I'm Heather Marie, founder of Soulgate. Welcome to Channel Squared, where we have extraordinary channel conversations about everyday life topics. Each week, we choose a topic, connect with you, the divine, and our guides, and channel here with you live.
Yeah, and today we're talking about a guide to healing through the body. So, we're talking all about healing your body. Can you heal yourself? How can you heal yourself? And how is unresolved trauma within the body impacting your life? And joining us today is expert Annette Maria, a liberated leadership coach, intuitive author, insight timer teacher, and founder of Sanctuary Publishing. She supports visionary leaders in illuminating their liberated self, moving from their center and making a clean impact. She is an advocate for everybody learning how to cultivate inner safety and radical self-trust so we can create a culture of self-leaders. Welcome, Annette.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
We're so excited to have you here.
Yeah,
So
this is really going to be a great episode. I just already feel it. It's just the energy here collectively. The three of us is going to be really, really fun. So
yeah,
that was quite the lead in, Jody.
right? Well, there's a lot of information. You're just so talented, Annette. We got to say all of the things. Tell us about yourself, though. What you do, who you are, how you got here.
Yeah, I mean, how long do we have, right? I mean, I have a lot of things going on. I'm a multi-passionate individual, so I don't just have one path. My way of getting here has been multifaceted, crawling, over the doors, under the doors. I'm like, there's no way to contain me.
I
So,
love that.
yeah, so I don't put myself really in a box. So really I go where my heart's being called and pulled. So back in 2017, I made a declaration to the divine that I was here to do what my soul was meant to do, and I was done to try and live otherwise, and I was here to do whatever that was going to look like. So that led me on a path of I was a yoga teacher, massage therapist, and I started to see with all my massage clients how their body was responding to the way that they were speaking and the traumas that they had, but they were just there to work on the physical level. So when I was like, well, do you want to go deeper, right? It was kind of like a blockade of, well, no, you just tend to the muscles. And I was like, but your body's telling me there's more. So that is kind of that work of really working on the physical body only, really for and energy as well, but just really the physicality for about 3 to 4 years really kind of opened the window to me of what the body's really holding on to and how to work through the body for our healing rather than trying to transcend the body. So that really is the basis of the work that I do with my clients in landing in a sense of liberation. And really, for me, what that means is that we are present here today, that we feel capable of being all of ourselves in this moment. So, not living as our traumatized survivor self, but living as our present moment self, unattached to those timelines and hooks of what was. And that's what I support leaders in doing, whether that's through coaching and healing work or through writing and sharing their story through Sanctuary Publishing, whatever outlet is being kind of called to.
Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Oh my goodness. Where do we start, Heather?
Pick a thing, anything.
Well, I want to know, Annette, were you on a spiritual journey when you started massaging and then you started to receive downloads, or like what did that look like specifically when you were with somebody and you could see that there was a deeper issue? When you say that, what do you mean?
Mm. I was on a spiritual journey, honestly, from a very young age. When I was in eighth grade, I kind of got thrown into a yoga room. I was a chubby kid, and my mom took me to the gym, and I was like, well, what are you supposed to do? So then I started to venture into the yoga room. So I always say yoga saved my life because if it wasn't for that practice, if it wasn't for me finding it at such a young age, I probably wouldn't be presently here speaking to you guys or on this earth, to be quite honest, with everything that I was moving through
Wow.
in life. So I was always open to more and I was always super curious about it. So I was deep in yoga, deep in when I was in massage, I was really immersed in my identity also of being a yogi, right? That also became an identity of how I walked around in the world. But what I mean by when the body was speaking, it was like there was a conversation I have with the nervous system. So it's not so much like I see it, it's this deep feeling, and it's kind of trusting the intuitive feeling is what my experience was. Sometimes I would receive insight like what type of trauma, like kind of like physical, sexual, emotional, like kind of like a umbrella label would kind of get dropped in, like, oh, this is what's here. But it looks different in every situation. But it's really kind of like this nervous system conversation that is had with me and someone's body.
Very cool.
So, as you were speaking, I have a question. My question is about you had mentioned that at a very early age, when you were dropped into the yoga room and it saved your life, and you were in this sort of dark place. I feel like a lot of us that are here to do great things, that are on the spiritual path, that are, moving through, whether it be current lifetime trauma or past lifetime trauma, like, I feel like that's a common theme amongst, I'm going to just, I don't know, categorize
Blanket.
everybody as like, yeah, blanket everybody as like light workers or star seeds or whatever, right? I feel like those of us that have come here for this ascension, we've all had this type of like traumatic something, whether it be previous timeline, alternate timeline or current timeline. But I feel like a lot of it does come from childhood, from that. And I feel like it's maybe during that separation, or that when the connection sort of glitches out, around 7, 8, 9 years old. Do you think that is kind of what you were going through when you were having this sort of awakening with yoga? Like, talk more about that, because I'm so fascinated by this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I myself, through my childhood, experienced the trauma and abuse on all different levels: sexual, emotional, physical, right? And I don't need to go into the details of all those, but I experienced it across the board. And I also was always trying to get put into this box of like, okay, this is what a girl is, this is what a good Polish girl should be in the world. I kept they kept trying to put me in the box, as well as and that was traumatizing in itself, right? But I look at that more as the conditioning, and then the trauma was the another layer. So that was always the constant, and I always felt like but I always knew that I was meant to do things different. Like I don't. There wasn't like a so much of an awakening as much as just like I always knew that I was not meant to do whatever they were saying. So I was like, yeah, like you're doing this, you are conditioning me now that I know. But I also was like, but that's not it for me. But I'll try it on so that, I don't receive any sort of repercussion or. So that for me was really that part of the process of I was deep in the world, of course, but I also just knew that like it was like my soul was already turned on, and she was really turned on because I always need to take care of myself, right? No matter what was occurring, whether I always need to make sure I was okay, because those around me, they were there to take care of, my survival needs, but not the emotional needs as much. So I always need to take care of me. So it was like that part of me got turned on super young. It was like my adult was already there. My inner mother was already holding me before I even knew what a mother really was. So that really was part of that. And then yoga, why that was such a catalyst for me is it showed me a different aspect of connecting to myself and my spirituality. I was brought up in a Roman Catholic household, and I knew that that was not it for me. I was like boycotting it always. But again, I was put into this box. I would always have anxiety attacks going to church and mass, and not knowing why. I just thought there was something wrong with me, right? So when I was kind of shown a new way, I think that's all we need is just a new possibility to be shown. That's like, all right, shoulders loosen. there's another pathway, right? I know, Joe, we love possibilities.
We
So,
sure do.
so it really just opened up the possibility of just connecting and breathing and being in the body. There was just something that just kind of ignited before I really knew what was happening. When we experience a lot of trauma, we disconnect from the body. So there was just something like, oh, wow, okay, I'm here in this room. But I would always leave, especially when I first started, I would always leave practice like really dizzy because it was so intense to be in my body.
Mm.
And I think that that's so, like, when I talk to healers and, experts like yourself, the common thread that I see is that what really qualifies them is that they've had the experience. When they are going in to assist others in this massive transformation of their soul. I'm like getting head to toe goosebumps right now. Like, they're coming to you for this massive transformation, and the fact that you have walked the path in advance of them to help guide them to that freedom and that self-expression and all of the beauty and the ability to see the beauty in what they have transcended. This can only come from someone who has truly been there before. And I think that that's what makes you so special, is that the way that you have experienced not only other timelines in this traumatic way, but you have also had it in this current timeline. So it's like a fresh reminder, right, of why you're here and the movement that you're to assist humanity. It's really beautiful. Really, really beautiful.
Thank you. And I think that's why I continue to boldly walk through it, right? It didn't just stop after the childhood shit. I don't know if I can curse. The childhood upheaval, right? It continued. Life is still happening, right? The dance with the shadow and the light is happening day in and day out. But I think that's why I'm so committed to it, is because yes, it's for me, but it's also nothing to do with me. It's like there's always that like dance of the two, because I know I am going through it for myself, but also so I can have a greater understanding and capacity to just hold other people. It doesn't even need to even be in a healing container. It could just be just another human on this planet, to be able to expand my capacity, to be able to have that sense of compassion and to truly see a deeper realm of love for another can only be seen through walking through it all within ourselves. And I mean, that's what I'm here for, whether I'm doing my practice or not. Like, that's why I live in the world. So thank you.
So beautiful. Oh, head to toe goosebumps. Seriously. Oh my goodness. And the courage that I've watched from you over our relationship and getting to know one another, but also just watching you from like Instagram, just watching this courage come out of you, and you're not afraid to be in your body. You're not afraid to dance. You're not afraid to walk that path. And I think that's extraordinary.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So how do we heal the body? Can we do it? What do we do? Let's
go into that.
Let's go.
I'm always talking with my hands moving, so I talk.
I love that about you, though. That's something that I noticed, like for the first time almost right now, is how fluid your whole being is while you're talking, but not in like, I feel like I'm a little awkward doing it, but just how your whole body is resonating with the words that you're saying. Like, you are so authentic in the entire picture, the way that you bring yourself forward. So
thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you. And I realize I talk a lot with my body, because we don't just talk with our words. Really, our subconscious, so we get really locked into. So I'm going to just touch on when you said like the body, right? How do we work with this? And I'll kind of dance around here. But we get so locked into the healing path of the mind, and we kind of like disconnect, and we are all really hyper focused about the mind, the mindset. We think we think it's all just in here. And then we also get really locked into like another spiritual realm or realms, whatever it is. So we're either stuck here or out there. And we're constantly kind of going in and out of this like little transit, but it just disconnects what we're actually meant to do on this earth, which is meant to experience our human form. So I know ascension is a main topic that's spoken about here. And for me, ascension is also an act of descension into the human form and into the human experience, right?
Absolutely.
So, for me, the first aspect of healing through the body is to acknowledge that you are a human being on this earth and that you are meant to be here to experience all that comes with it. And what comes with it is our senses, right? Our feelings, our ability to taste, feel, see, all of it. So that to me is kind of the beginning of acknowledgement, is that it's about bringing the holistic view, not just into like our health, but also into our emotional healing, into our trauma work. Because oftentimes when we've experienced trauma, we experience a sense of disassociation. When trauma occurs, it's really just a threat that happens. It doesn't matter what capacity, really what it looked like externally, it's how we perceive it. So it doesn't matter really what occurred. It's though a threat occurred and you as a person weren't able to fight or flee, so instead you just froze in time, and it's like a part of you left, right? That an aspect of your soul disassociates out, and then you're continued, and if it's left unprocessed, you're continued living as that kind of disconnected self. And if there's been a lot of different complex traumas, then there's a major act of being fully disconnected from the body, which could feel like anxiety, like you're floating, like you're not actually on the earth or of the earth, right? Like depression is an aspect of it, and it looks different, not being connected to our physical body throughout the day, right? All of these are kind of signs of being disassociated. So the first act of healing through the body is starting to become aware of our state, our present moment state, of how we're actually feeling moment to moment in the day. So it's kind of just like micro moments of connection. Like, oh, hey, oh my gosh, we're here, okay, you know? And that's really the beginning point. I can go a little deeper. I don't know if you guys had anything that came up while I was speaking about that, or if you want me to keep.
Well, I do have a question. I want you to continue, but I do have a question. So these disassociated pieces, are these like, so I've talked to shamans and have done some shaman work in the past myself, and received some training in the past. And so, in shamanism, they talk about like lost soul pieces, and they'll go out and do soul piece retrieval and bring those back. And then you have like an integration period where you have to, reintegrate them. Is this sort of the same thing, or is this different?
This is the same, yeah. So
Okay.
my work is also, I'm also, tomorrow I'm graduating from my first year of shamanic practitioner training. So I'm also
Ooh.
deeply open in that world. But the somatic work that I do with people is tied deeply with shamanism because it's very earth based and of the body. So really it's just bringing back those pieces of ourself. If we kind of think we're like a piece of Swiss cheese sometimes, right? And it's like a part of yourself left. It's like bringing back that bit and then making you like a piece of cheddar. And then you're like that.
I love that. I love cheese.
I think visuals help. But yeah, it's about bringing more of you back online so that you can get to know who you are versus who you were conditioned and trained and traumatized to be, because that's just like your survival self verse, and that part of you will get you so far, will protect you, will, has done so much. But if we're desiring more depth out of life, we can't stay here, because
Yeah.
that part of ourself doesn't know what depth feels like, doesn't know what expression is, because it's not important. We need to survive. So then when we're able to bring more of ourselves back, that's where I kind of, got into thriving. We're able to actually be here.
So this survival self, does it always manifest in terms of like pain inside of the body, or are there other cues for those that are listening right now, thinking like, how do I know if I'm the survival self or if I am the thriving self? at this point today.
Yeah. So the survival self can look at different capacities. It's a part of us that's always going to be there, right? So it's like when I talk about different aspects of self, it's like you have a really long banquet table and there's all these pieces of you that are sitting at your table. So this is
Yeah.
a part that's like gonna always be there because that's the part that's gonna protect you, that has protected you. But it's how, if it's like the main actor on stage every day. So I'll kind of touch on that, like if it was like day in and day out. So the survival self looks like a major theme of that is like people pleasing, always bulldozing yourself for anyone around you. Or it's kind of feeling like you're kind of numb as well. So there's people pleasing, there's numbness, there's a sense of physical disconnection. Like a pretty common thing is like not eating throughout the day, not drinking water, like just fully being disconnected from what you need on a personal level. As well as if you have any desires or goals that you want to work towards and you oftentimes stop yourself and block yourself from going there, or from even like if you think about it, you're like, yeah, but that's not possible, right? That's a sense of protection for yourself so that you don't
Mm.
expand too big for someone to notice you. So the energy of being afraid of being seen is also tied to that. So those
Wow.
are kind of some main pillars, but it looks different for really everyone, but those are kind of pretty common connection points. Also, just another sign if, trouble with sleep and like just trouble with um, base level things that like our basic human needs. If we're struggling with those elements, then that's a sign that our survival self is out of whack and kind of trying to run the show.
Wow, it's so interesting. Like I've never talked to anybody who's been able to like articulate that in that way. And I see that so often with my clients. Shoot, I even have a few of those, me personally. So I'm like,
Mhm.
gosh, where do I sign up? But that's so interesting how there's like markers that are like, this is what's happening to you, this is what's happening to you, and this is the indicator that you have an imbalance, and really should seek out the assistance to get those pieces back reintegrated, and so that you're not in this constant fleeting attempt at survival.
Yeah.
um because when you're in that survival mode, you just can't even, like, you can't be who you truly are here to be. You can't be fully expressed because you're just surviving. So wow, that's so good. Anybody who is listening to this should back up and write all those down and then contact you.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that this conversation is so important to what humanity is experiencing right now. And again, I echo Heather's words in the way that you articulated it so beautifully, that we're either in this other place out here or we're within our mind, but we're not really in the body. And we can get really good at being spiritual, like out there, really good at mindset, and someone's life can look pretty good. I feel like my life looks pretty good, but I also resonate with what you're saying about being seen. And now I'm curious, like, I bet you there's some trauma there. There's a portion of my banquet table that still sits firmly in the surviving seat, or the survivor's seat. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and we
Absolutely
love the
fascinating.
banquet table though. Like that's the thing is like I like it's when I work with individuals, it's not about saying that this part of self is bad. I don't really believe in bad or good like that. It's
Yeah.
about looking at them and letting them actually have their voice finally. Like letting that part of that self be heard and be like, "Oh, finally, like I've been trying to get through, but like no one sees me past the candles, right?" And it's about letting more of you communicate to you, right? So that you can just get to know who you are. So that to me is really the kind of the bridge that happens as we start to get to know these pieces of self. And they may feel like, oh, yeah, 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 but that's just like my whiny little self. But if we keep pushing that aside as, oh, there's just that over there, that's essentially us deeming, if you want to kind of look at it as like another human, right? A little kid. If you kept saying to this little kid, yeah, but I'm gonna push you over into that corner, like that's just annoying. That's just this little nuance. We have other things to worry about.
Yeah.
What's that kid going to do? It's going to get louder. It may manifest in other health issues, right? Oftentimes, when we have the traumas in the body that are unprocessed and that we're stuck, our nervous system is stuck in that way of operating, then other things may start to occur. I believe that's why a lot of autoimmune diseases are occurring on this earth, and a lot of fibromyalgia. I've been seeing, all of these elements is because the body is literally screaming out to the traumas that we've moved through, screaming out to be processed. But we're like, oh, this is just, again, a physical condition only, right? Only looking at it as like one context, rather than, I believe, the things that we're experiencing, whether it's physical pain, disease, is really an emotional imbalance, an energetic imbalance that occurs that is really just trying to get our attention. It's like a red flag of like, hi, this is like pretty bad. Are you gonna
It's like your early warning system.
Yeah, it's like, are you gonna listen to? Oh, still no? Okay, great.
It's really interesting. As you're talking, I was thinking about like trauma events. When you have a traumatic event that occurs, have you seen when you've been working with your clients where there is maybe a traumatic event that seems totally unrelated to what they're currently experiencing, yet that trauma event triggered this maybe previous trauma from another lifetime, trauma from somewhere else to re-manifest in somebody? And you do. Okay. The reason I'm asking that is because I myself have had a few traumatic events that have occurred since a point when I consider in my life that I was the most healthy, most vibrant version of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And the two traumatic events that occurred were the same trauma, same, and yet they affected me physically in like such a profound way that it's creating other havoc, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like in my physical body. And so it's really interesting, like when I think about trauma and I think about, okay, those two traumatic events occurred and they had the same action or reaction in my life, and yet my physical body is behaving in a way almost totally unrelated to what that trauma actually was. Almost like a money trauma would create I don't know, like a cancer in the body, right? Somebody maybe hits a financial distress and then a cancer or an autoimmune disorder shows up. Do you see that type of like correlation in your practice?
I mean, that definitely can occur, and I see it more when you were speaking first. I was seeing it more in the context of when you're experiencing a trauma now, and it activates something that was tied to something in the past that you didn't even think could be possibly related to what's happening now. So that I see all the time, right? It's like a remanifestation that occurs because really when we have moved through, when there's like that piece of ourselves that kind of gets lost, right? And we continue, it's like our nervous system, our body gets locked into that way of being. So we may be 35, 20, whatever, we may be however many years old, but it's like our body's still stuck as that like 4-year-old self that experienced that thing. And it acts in the world in that way. So, I mean, that can occur when and then if there's the disease, I mean, there's of course so many factors that tie into that, but that can be like a real call for help, that the body's like, hey, like I'm really trying to get your attention once again through this act, like, will you listen? And my teacher always says, that taught me a lot about the somatic world, is the body doesn't choose the circumstance, it just chooses how it's responding. So it didn't choose what happened to you, but it is choosing the response that it's having to help you really find harmony in whatever way it can.
And it's just trying to protect you.
Yeah, it does a really good job day in and day out of making sure we're okay. And there's nothing and we gotta love that, right? But we also are so quick to push it aside, like, no, 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 but I can't deal with this sickness, this, like, I sprained my ankle a couple weeks ago. Like, I don't want to deal with these things right now. I have life to live and these things to do, but these things are happening to kind of bring us back into the
Mm-hmm.
being, into the body.
So funny, as like a society, we're like, oh yeah, I have to go to work and that is more important, or this is more important, cleaning my house is more important, everything in the world is more important than this connection and understanding what's actually going on. And I'm guilty of it as well. But you need to, like, it's just so interesting that that's how we've evolved, or our society has evolved, to placing the importance on these things that are really meaningless. I mean, you can't take money to the grave. And it doesn't matter how much money you have. A lot of people have said this. It doesn't matter how much money you have. If you get some sort of, incurable disease or something like that, like, it doesn't matter. It's game over. And it's so interesting, the value that we have today on all of these other things outside of what's really important. Let's be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that that stems from the disconnection from nature itself, right? From living, like, kind of tying back to that shamanic roots, like that disconnection from from nature, and living in a ceremonial way with all that is, and seeing how when a seed is planted, the pumpkin doesn't grow in a day, right? Like, just really looking at nature as our teacher also is a direct reflection to how our body is operating, because we operate pretty similar with the moon and all these elements, right? We're cyclical beings. Are the expansion and contraction that happens in the seasons, like, there's that disconnect that has happened. And then also the disconnect for expression, right? We make all of those other things important, the things that are in the box, the masculine type, like this, that. We love the masculine. I'm not saying that's bad, but, like, we make that the important. And then the creativity, the making of art and expression, is deemed as bad. And the art and expression is what is going to help heal you.
Mm-hmm.
That's been primal way of healing since day one. Storytelling and dance, like, that's what was done to help heal trauma, right? So it's kind of reconnecting to our primal roots of how the body knows how to heal. So we don't need to get fancy. We can, but we don't need to.
Love that.
I love the pumpkin doesn't grow in a day. Sometimes when I'm working with my clients, because of my direct connection, and my instant information, they are expecting instant everything, right? And thank you, Amazon, for creating instant gratification, y'all. Like, that is just, why are we living in this time? But the thing is that sometimes, they will come to me and they are wanting some clarity around, maybe a physical ailment that they're experiencing. And, they've seen a healer, and the healer has assisted them, and they have received the healing, but they're almost doubting the healing because it's not instant. And I'm like, hold on. Like, you have to allow your body time to assimilate the healing. The healing was received. I've gotten validation that the healing was in fact performed and your body did receive it. But, slow your roll a little bit, it'll happen.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful to, like, hear that firsthand from you, that it does take time, and that the body, it's a very intricate set of systems, and they're all connected. And I know for me personally, I spend a lot of time up here because this is the world in which I work in. So I half the time don't know what's happening from here down because I'm up here all the time. So, this is such a fascinating conversation. I'm totally digging it. Yeah.
So, do you have some tips for us on how to start healing some of these things that would be safe for, our listeners or our audience to start doing?
Absolutely. I think the first thing is making it a practice in some way each day to turn on the senses, right? Coming into the body is about like sensory awareness. So making it doesn't need to be a profound act, right? But doing something that lets you wake up the senses, which is waking up the present moment. It's kind of like, going deeper. It's like a deeper present. But
Oh, I
so
love that. And I'm just like thinking about it right now. Oh, the senses. What are the senses? Oh, yeah, yeah. What do I smell? Like, just going through it at like an elementary level of what does that mean for myself? But you're right. It completely activates this moment.
yeah, so it could literally mean spending the morning if you're, waiting for coffee to brew or doing whatever, if you don't have a daily practice, if that feels intimidating in any way, just even rubbing the hands together and just being like, and just noticing what that feels like, right? To feel the sensation of touch from yourself, right? Bringing the hands onto the thighs, like all of these elements, the more you do it, right? It just drops the awareness out of the head and down. And often if we're starting the day and we're all up here, we're going to run the rest of the day like that. So if we can do anything to help drop down, so whether that's during, so finding something like that. I love to circle my hips while I brush my teeth, like get creative. I also have a pretty robust practice that I do every day just because that feels good for me. Movement and dance are main elements of that. That's like the foundation of the work I do is movement and dance work with individuals. But those are different ways to wake up the senses is like number one would be my one tip and like the many facets of that. And then the second tip is so this work is about turning back the conversation that the body's trying to have with you. So it's like there's like the phone, like a landline, let's go back in the day. There's been a landline that's been disconnected from the wall. And it's still, it's like wanting to you're like, oh, I need to fix that, but I'll do it later. So this is about like bringing the cord back into the wall and like re-picking up that conversation the body's trying to have. So if you're starting to feel during the day a bit wobbly, or if you have pain here, if you start to get these body-based cues and just starting to get curious with them and just like asking that part of your body what it's trying to communicate and just opening up like pick up the phone and ask. And it may not be instant, right? Sometimes it'll take time for like, the service to get turned back on, but just open up the conversation as if you would to a guide up above, right? And see what's there. It may be something as simple as like I'm really hungry, and maybe like I need a nap. It also may be like I'm really sad about X, Y, and Z. But just start listening and tending to what comes. So
that tending piece,
that,
it's like, oh, am I hungry right now? Yes, I'm hungry, but I have other shit to do. Yes, I need a nap, but I have other stuff to do. Again, back to that priority and that value, putting ourselves as the priority and giving ourselves what we need. And I find that's cyclical too. I mean, there'll be times I'm really great at it, and then another season goes by and I'm really awful. So I don't know if you could speak to that, how to be better more consistently.
I think the consistency really comes from the daily choosing of self. I think that it's what is the priority in your world, and if you're last on your list, well, then we know where you stand, right? So I think I love to kind of, whether it's like, if you're love to look at your months ahead, your week ahead, whatever it is, but see how you can make yourself the priority. How are you going to choose yourself as life is happening? And then in that, it's something that you have to teach yourself, right? It's like you're learning how to ride a bike again. So you're just learning how to ride a bike in general. So there's going to be times of not choosing self, but you're also going to, when you do that, you're going to experience what that feels like versus what it did feel like to choose yourself, right? So then you can be like, okay, well, what feels better for me? What do I want to experience more of? So it's always a question I ask myself of, well, what do I want to be experiencing more of? And if it's more of this, well, then how do I do that for myself? The world isn't going to give it to you. You got to give it to yourself. So it's like being honest with yourself, and also just do it. No one's going to do it for you, you know?
Yeah. Taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
Love
You know,
that.
it's fascinating when I think back to some of the times when I have been like the most successful version of myself, right? Like in business, for example. It has been when I've had the highest self-care. Like when I was really focused on my self-care, and it was like clients didn't get in on my yoga time. Clients didn't get in on my breakfast, lunch, snack times. You know, like I had times scheduled throughout my client workload where it was like, 15 to 30-minute break just so that I could have a snack and sit out in the sunshine. And when I was really being super diligent with that care, it's like the financial effect in my business just went through the roof. And it's so fascinating how when you bring that awareness back into your body and taking care of your physical body, it almost like sends out a signal to the universe. It's like, she can handle anything, bring it, bring it, because she's good, and so everything shows up in your life all at once. And it was really it's a reminder. I'm glad we're having this conversation. It's a reminder to really prioritize that self-care. Yeah. So good.
Yeah. And it's almost like the universe is like, oh, she can actually experience it on this deeper level now with all of the senses, rather than superficially this direction or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that cause and effect that you tied together there. But I also want to touch on that we're doing this just for the act of doing it for self, right? When we get really latched to I'm doing this for this effect, it's no longer for self. It's then for this external thing, right? So it's there. It's about what we're desiring to feel more of within. And then the other things are just like these beautiful additions in life that get to happen. And we're like, yes, like I get to experience more of this. It's amazing. But also, if all those things were gone, right? Because sometimes that will occur as well. Also, we're going to be okay because we know how to take care of ourselves. If, the universe knows that we can handle the good and the bad when we're able to take care of ourselves in that full, like, kind of I don't know how else to say that way.
Embodiment.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
a really strong way of
like power stance.
I talk to my body in noises often, so I'm like, can someone translate? Like, so
that's okay. I find too when I'm channeling something, I'm like, it kind of feels like this feeling, and that you and I have worked together. So I will say it's not this feeling, this word, but it's somewhere in here because it feels like language is limited.
Yeah.
And that's why we were given all of these things to experience
and to express.
This is
how we get to know one another, right? Through it all, not just through words, right? Because we've met people that they say one thing, but their body's saying something else, and we're like, what's really happening here, right? It's about really seeing the world around us, and the more we get to know ourselves, is the more we start to see everyone else as well, which. That's another conversation.
That's profound. That is so true. The more that you see yourself, the more that you can see the others around you more clearly. Whew. Mic drop.
For good or bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it's all in there, right? Like light and dark, black and white, good and bad, all of the polarities or the not polarities, but like the balance of the scales, if you will. There's always an opposite side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the beautiful contrast.
That's exactly. Thanks for filling in the words, Heather.
You're welcome. It's what I do.
Yeah, that's right. That's what we have a great community for is, filling in the words that we can't seem to find at the moment. Yeah. Amazing. So as we're kind of moving through and getting closer to the end of the episode, what is the message that you want the world to hear, Annette? What do they need to hear right now? And anything else you want to fill in there?
My message that I want the world to hear today is really that you are here today. Be proud of that. Yes, you may have things you want to work on, things to tend to, things to do. Yeah. But also, you here now is such an accomplishment and something that needs to be celebrated. Again, we love celebrations, right, Jody?
Sure do.
But needs to be celebrated time and time again, because it won't matter where you get if you can't acknowledge the brilliance of who you are today. So that's really my message for you, is just to take a moment, look around your world and be like, shit, this is where I'm at. And I'm here.
Loving it.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So I know that, there's a couple different ways to work with you. You go through this practice a couple different ways. Can you tell us how, how your programs are structured, or what you offer to the world in helping them connect with their body and heal it?
Absolutely. So on my healing side of my work, the coaching side, that is really kind of a co-creative container. It's not like a one size fits all for that. So in that, there's an initial session that is had that's 3 hours long, that's really kind of diving in. And then after that session is how we co-create your process. So you're able to experience it first, and then we're able to go deeper if it feels really good for you. So that is done virtually, as well as in New Jersey here out of my home. But that is one way. And on the other way, it's a little bit more high touch. So that the somatic work and moving through the body is sprinkled throughout, but throughout the publishing side of my work. So if there's a book that is being called to be birthed through you, then that gets infused there so that you feel safe and ready to be seen and heard. So that gets sprinkled throughout that process as well.
And you just had a launch for a writer's retreat. Is that correct?
I did actually, but that retreat is actually happening soon. But today is actually the release of a multi-author book called Silence No More, Empowering the Next Generation of Women. So this is a book of 11 women from across the world who are sharing their personal perspective on what it means to no longer be silent. And they use the act of writing, this act of expression, to really move through a lot of healing, to be ready to be share this in the world, and to not just do it for themselves, but for the other women and men and beings around, but also for all those who will come and all those who have already been. Wow. So that book is available on Amazon, and the paperback will be out on September 23rd. So
yeah, we'll have to get a link so we can drop it in the show notes so they can go and get that. And then we'll also have another link so that people can connect with you. What's the best way to connect with you if they're just curious or they want to know more about you?
The best way to connect is through Instagram. So Annette Maria is the best way. Everything is going through a rebrand right now. So the quick message is the best way to chat about how is best supportive. And it's usually just hopping on a quick 15-minute phone call to see and to chat and to feel into one another. And then from there, that's where we go.
Beautiful. Yeah.
No fun.
Oh, I love this conversation so much. And I think it is obviously important because we have done, several episodes now about the body and that message of, stop being out here or in here, but dropping into the body. So I think whatever's going on collectively, we all need to drop into our bodies and check in. And this is such a beautiful reminder. And we'll have everything for you, Annette. If you want to connect with Annette, in the show notes, so you have quick links there. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure that you hit the like button and make sure you're subscribed. We're so close to that unique link that we can get through YouTube. And, thank you for listening today. And thank you for being our guest today, Annette. It was so helpful. And I just think an inspiring conversation. So thank you so much for being here. And we'll see you guys all next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.